Canada's been doing pretty good. We're all right. I got a feeling that we don't really have the virus out in the wild at this time. As long as that virus is out there, we're living patients, not in ICU, there's always a risk. And even in the ICU, there's still a... Anyways, the thing is, Canada hasn't passed laws requiring people to behave in certain ways. You don't get a fine if you go out in public and crowd people or even cough on them. Much less having to wear a mask. Here comes a truck going by. This street is the only one between two main arterials, and it's dead set between the other two main arterials, so they shortcut through our neighborhood on my street. So that's a frequent noise in the summer. And that's okay. You know, it's all right to drive your truck 70 kilometers an hour past a park and a school. I mean, you know, they're only kids, right? They can figure it out. They can hear you coming. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, getting people to cooperate with laws like speed laws, mask laws. In Philippines, they didn't bother with all of that would you please stuff. They just went straight to you shall or else. And to make things simple for our police officers, there's going to be no gray areas left in the law. If you are outside of the walls of your home, wear a mask. Now, I believe Philippines is a Muslim-dominant country, and they have often had to fight Sharia law, so the whole idea of covering up people's faces is not new to the Philippines. You know, it's not the same terrifying thing of, oh my, people with their faces covered can commit acts of crime and we won't know who they are. Which, you know, all winter long we have our faces covered. And now all of a sudden with COVID-19, nobody's bringing up that complaint. It's only useful when it's an ethnic minority doing it, I guess. So anyway, in some countries they're going to some really extremes. You know, I would not be willing. In some places you can't leave your house. There were some places where you just don't leave your house. And then we look at the American situation. They're doing we're not going to require people if we can help it thing, and we're going to leave it up to locals, and we're going to let each area figure out for themselves, and, you know, maximum freedom. People are complaining up the yin-yang. They're like, yeah, you shut down this, you closed that, you did the other thing, where they're congregating in large groups in public to complain about not being allowed to congregate in large groups in public due to a deadly disease. And we're not even going to discuss the whole question of whether it's real or not, whether it's engineered or not, whether there's any point in this, because I think that a lot of that is wishful thinking on the part of some very frightened cowards. And they're sharing it with a whole lot of other people to make it true, because one of the things cowards love to do is repeat an untruth to themselves until they believe it. And then they hope that when they open their eyes, that's what they'll see. And when you're doing propaganda and public mindset, it actually works that way. So I don't know, they're hoping they don't catch the disease while everybody else goes out. And I heard that Sweden said, you know what? You just go on out there and catch that disease and get sick and die at home, please. And once everybody who's susceptible to it is dead, we'll all be fine. I don't know if that report was true. It seems utterly absurd to me. Sweden doesn't strike me as a place that doesn't care about the people who died. That doesn't care that people are dying. I know that they've got some pretty strong practices that leave us going like, what? You know, they're not afraid to do radical things. But I think that they are very compassionate people, and I don't believe for 1 minute they just put a lock on the seniors' home and said, okay, all you folks are going to have to die so we can have herd immunity, or anything crazy like that. Care homes and whatnot. But the idea does exist in some people's minds, and these are the libertarians. The trouble with libertarians is they genuinely don't give a damn about anyone else. They think someone else does. They think enough other people give a damn to make up the deficit in them, that they shouldn't have to be required by anybody to behave in a way that shows any caring just because other people care. They say things like, let charity take care of it. Do you realize that charity is not unconditional? When you go to a charity, you're going to have to ascribe to their particular moral set of values every single time. And charities are almost universally created by people for moral reasons. They're created through moral agencies like churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, and the like, or outreaches thereof of a religion. And they're almost universally created by a religion. And a religion is nothing more than a way of forcing morality on a group of people. Faith is your connection to something more than the physical world. Faith is your belief that there's something more than the physical world. Your connection to it, that's spirituality. But the body of organizations that tell you how to live, that's religion. And they're generally the people who are running the charities, and the charities aren't letting their patrons off easy. They pry into your life. They want to know what you think about when you're alone in bed at night. They want to know who you love, how often you attend religious studies. There's all kinds of stupid things that they may require of you. And they may not do it immediately. Some of them are very, very subtle. They start out with unconditional help, and they wait until you're well into it and say, well, now, we saved your life. We think you should come to our church with us. And generally the person is so vulnerable and susceptible that they do it. And one hopes that it works out for the best anyway, and that's okay. And that the faith gives them what they need, and that the people are a community for them, and all is well. But it still comes down to having to go to someone with moral opinions for charity when you are unable to thrive in the society as it stands. And yet, it is a social obligation, not a religious one. The religion is trying to push it because they recognize it as an act of humanity. One of the basic fundaments of being human is that we give a damn about each other. It's important enough to us to have embedded it in every song, story, and tale of ever. No one has escaped their life without someone telling them a song or a story about caring about someone else. It's that important to us. Just massively important. Yet at the same time, guaranteed, you're not going to get a charity administered privately by a non-secular and or impartial group other than one through a government. You just can't, because that's what a government is. I realize that governments have so much power that they're easily corrupted, that you have to worry about it, and that they are dangerous things. And you should, and they are. And you should never stop being vigilant. It's true. But the government is not your enemy. The government is your tool. The reason it feels like an enemy is because there are agents out there whose job it is to convince you that it's your enemy, so that you won't work cooperatively with your government. So we'll close that window, and that'll be the end of that noise. It's important to certain aspects of our society and culture that you do not get a handle on your own government, that you believe that it's your enemy, and that you don't pick up the tool. It's like they've got you locked in, but they've locked you in with your workshop, your tool bench, your toolbox, all the tools, everything's there. I mean, really, you have everything you need to defeat the locks that they have used to put on you. Except one thing. You're afraid of those tools. Hammers are hard and heavy. You might accidentally hit your head with it. Don't touch it. Oh, no, no, don't trust it. No, no, no. You never know when that hammer is just going to suddenly go wild. Oh, and power tools. Oh, now everybody knows they run on their own. You can't be sure what they're going to do. Don't pick up that saw. It'll cut your leg off. That's what they've been doing with you, with your government. And if you're not a tool person, you know the fears I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I am a tool person, and I still have those fears. And in fact, I think any tool person who still has all of their parts has a healthy regard for those fears. Just as a healthy population has a healthy regard for the hazards of their government. But if you don't use the tools you have, you are locked in and helpless. Your captor has got you and has access to all your tools as well. Just walks in the room and starts using your tools to build your prison a little tighter. Or to create a torture device. Or, anyways, the metaphor is going too far. Point being, you're in charge of your government. But if you behave like a child, if you behave like children, mindlessly complaining and tantruming and ticking people off and fighting for me all the time, and if you refuse to cooperate with your government, and you refuse to share with your government, and you won't let your government have any resources to work with, you are impoverishing your own tools. You are handing your toolbox over to somebody else in a disheveled state and refusing to use it for yourself. You need to pay attention to what your government's doing, but you also need to educate yourselves. You need to think deeply, and you also need to remember that we pay professionals to take care of their thing. You don't go telling a plumber how to unclog the toilet, because if you knew, you would have done it. You don't tell the flooring installer how to lay the floor. You don't tell the painter how to hold the brush. Stop telling the government how to govern. You've got forums for that. You have avenues of communication. You're not using them. No, I guarantee you not one of those people standing out there sharing viruses under the sun with their stupid little flippant signs in any way first bothered to mail letters to their congressmen, whoever, to their political leaders. As I know that it is true in Canada, and I believe it is still true in the United States. If you send them letters in the mail, they have to read them. And that takes time and manpower. And if enough letters come in the mail, then just like Mr. Smith goes to Washington, they will get pounded with mail, and they will have to stop everything to deal with it. And if the mail keeps coming, which is what you're capable of doing, they are going to have to address the problem. Now, at the current time, the problem is that people don't believe that the measures are necessary, that they're being told the truth, and that the lockdown is going to work. But it is working. They believe that the news of it working is also false. Okay, well, I know somebody on the ground in Philippines who's just an ordinary human being living, and I know them through non-political means. So definitely, yep, the law about even in your backyard with a high fence all around, you still have to wear your mask, yes. Which leads me to go, yes, the government is treating them like children. And I also saw somebody, that was a news report, so true, not true, but it was all about how in another one of these regions where people were just refusing to comply with the order, they were donning ghost costumes and haunting the village, and people were so afraid of the ghosts that they were, like, grown men were running in terror back to their houses where they belong because there was a ghost in the street. If you behave like children, they'll treat you like children. Now, here in Canada, one of the things that I really admire is they've been throwing a lot of free money around. They're making it a lot easier for people to comply because you can't just tell people what to do. You have to help them do it. So I think that we've been doing that part right, and I think that the U.S. has not been doing that part right. They are using it as an excuse to hand out more money to the multinationals and the billionaires using the trickle-down theory of economic propaganda, wherein they convince the lower classes that the rich people will be generous with them. And there we go back to that libertarian idea that charity can possibly be administered only by private organizations. You just can't trust them because the thieves follow the money, my friends. Governments can attract thieves too, but they're generally hemmed in with such a huge... Like, that's what the red tape is for. It's a set of protocols to help prevent the fraud and theft that you're worried about. And that red tape can be used by you just as much as against you. People need to do a little more socioeconomic study, political studies, and historical studies. Oh, do study history. That precious Constitution down there in the USA is nothing more than a third or fourth copy of the Magna Carta. Second copy, well, at any rate, I believe they got it from the French, who got it from the English, who made the Magna Carta. And they let the Spaniards help them modify it. Something along those lines. That history is that's not official, that's not verified. Okay, so you really want to know about the truth, go read it, and then come and tell me what I got wrong, because I love to be corrected much more than I love to do the research, and it's not my country. But the Magna Carta, I'm right about that one. The Constitution didn't invent those concepts. It just reworked them for a time and a place that was appropriate, and it's now been quite a lot of change since then, and I really, I was having this argument with Mr. and he was saying, well, that's what amendments are for, when you need to change it. And I'm like, no, amendments are there to make sure that the ordinary common man will never read the Constitution and never really be fully cognizant of his rights as a citizen, nor capable of using his Constitution to bring his government to bear. And that's the problem with the damn thing. It's got so many amendments now that it's just impossible. It's not a constitution. It's not a short, sharp, fired-off series of beliefs and understandings, because for every single one of the statements in the original Constitution, there's someone had said, unless and except in such a case as this, or, and also you ought to consider including these. Like, for instance, the original Constitution was for white men only. Literally. White men only. Under 16 or 18 or whatever the age of the minority, no. Female, no. Person of color, any color, no. Possibly Spaniards. Spaniards were still considered white back then. I know, well, it is part of Europe. And so the Latins and all of the Latin nations were still considered part of Europe. And why exactly the Spaniards got kicked out, I can only assume it's because they tan well and work hard. So they got kicked out of the club. You're not allowed to have a good tan, and you're not allowed to work hard. You might make the club look lazy. The old boys club that wrote the Constitution. Seriously, that damn thing needs to be rewritten. At any rate, if you're not going to use your government, I can see why you don't like it. But make no mistake, if you act like children, you'll get treated like children. And once you get treated like children, and this was the point that I was wanting to make ultimately, once your government starts treating you like children, there's no respect left. There's no self-respect for you, and there's no respect for your government, and your government has no respect for you. And when there is no respect, there is no longer a relationship. There is no longer a connection. Now you are simply fruit waiting to be plucked. You become a product, an object. You become thinged. You become a the instead of a someone. Instead of a they, it's a the. I had people do that to me once. They started talking about me when I wasn't there and calling me the. At least one of them was. And kind of ruined the friendship, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm the Joe. Really? Well, my name wasn't Joe at the time. That's another reason I like the name Joe. It's a lot harder to go the Joe, because Joe is a common, ordinary name. And the previous name was not common and ordinary. It was so bloody unique that it just made me even more the exception to every bloody rule going. That's why I hate the idea of charities being used to administer help, because if the current income situation changes for me, I don't qualify for anything at the moment, and I most definitely am not going to get help from any individual charities. I have been ousted from so many groups, and it was often for reasons I did not understand that I do now. It was a combination of things. In some cases, it was religiosophobia because I wasn't sufficiently zealous enough, or oh, what is the word you use for someone that's really tight with the religion and really moral? Yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about now. In some cases, it was because, I basically wasn't the right religion. I wasn't following the religion right. Even when I was going to the right church, I still wasn't moral enough for them to actually be supportive. No one walked up to me, clapped me on the back, and said, "Hey, I heard you're looking for work." Or, "Hey, I heard your home situation's awful. Would you like to come stay with us to finish out your school?" Nothing like that ever happened to me. And when I got older and I was still struggling, all I ever got from anybody was moral judgments. I got moral judgments because I'm transgender. Only it was not for being transgender, it was for talking about it. Because, after all, it wasn't real. And talking about it was the wrong thing. And then there was the mental illness thing. People would decide arbitrarily that I have a mental illness and therefore I'm not safe, sane, or consensual to be around, and they just, take a powder. So we've got fear of transgender, we've got fear of queer, fear of crazy, and fear of immoral behavior. Oh, and then the final nail in the coffin. The final nail in the coffin. Oh, I'm a drug addict. Oh, I smoke marijuana. I am really morally deficient now. I'm going to lead people astray. So now I'm the frickin' devil incarnate. And I am not getting charity from anyone but a secular, impartial, looks at the numbers, government-based organization like social services. It's the only place I'm ever going to get help. The only place I ever have gotten help. So, you libertarians, you freedom lovers, if you don't pick up the responsibilities and cooperation that comes with that freedom, it will be lost. It will be lost. And you're losing a whole lot of it right now. And some folks say that it'll never go back to normal, and they're not wrong. But how much freedom is returned to us may have a lot to do with our ability to give it up willingly and voluntarily longer than we want to. Also, to those of you who don't know how to buy some groceries, I hear you, I feel you, I've been there. I've been there not because of COVID-19, I've just been there. And my answer was wildcrafting, so get out there, it's spring. Go pick some dandelions, feed yourself. I mean, study how long it takes to actually starve. Have a look at what it looks like when a person's actually too thin to be healthy. And it should help you calm down a little bit and just start eating less. More tea, lots more tea. You can make tea from dandelion roots that's quite sustaining and satisfying and even nourishing. It will give you important minerals and it will help you calm down. So it's okay if the pantry's getting thin because the world isn't. Now, if you're living in some urban hellhole of an apartment block, yeah, you need more than I can help you with. You need better advice than I can give you. I've never lived in one of those. I've always lived in some kind of suburban house, whether it was a divided up lighthouse keeping suites kind of place or an individual house. I did live in row houses once. It was awful having people on the other side of the wall. I'm noisy. I don't really like noise, but I get noisy. Sometimes I like noise.